I think I did this talk just so I could share Camp Good Grief with you guys.
Where is the location, the physical location?
Well, I'll get to that. That's what I'm talking about. Actually, we're up in Camp Cedar Ridge. We go to Camp Cedar Ridge, which is right out of Cedar Ridge. It's a church camp. It's owned by Assemblies of God, I think, is who owns the camp. So, but that's where we go. So yeah. So that I had a hard time sitting through that. So I will refer to a couple of those things that you guys saw in the film. But as most of you know, it's near and dear to my heart, and I've been there since 2005 at Hope West Kids, and with a few years off due to my own personal losses. But as I've been contemplating leaving Hope West Kids soon, probably not as soon as I thought I was going to be leaving, but it just came to me how much the children have taught me, and how it relates to a spiritual path, all the characteristics they have. And like Debbie was talking, when Jesus talks about the children quite a bit. He says in Matthew that unless we change and become like little children, we'll never enter the kingdom of heaven. And according to the metaphysical interpretation of kingdom of heaven, which is what we use at Unity, the kingdom of heaven is the realm of divine ideas, just like Deb talked in a couple of weeks ago. So unless we become like children, we'll not be able to access those divine ideas. So yeah, our videos are on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel at Unity Grand Valley, and that's where you'll see Deb's talk if you missed it. It was really good. And in the Revealing Word, Charles Fillmore states that not only is the kingdom of heaven divine ideas, but it's also the producing of their expression in perfect harmony. So like Debbie said, the kingdom of heaven is within us. I thought that Camp Good Grief would be a perfect context to further explore these qualities that we see displayed in the kids, and how we can activate them to assist us on our spiritual path. First of all, I just want to acknowledge there's at least 2 people in here that have been to Camp Good Grief. Karen has volunteered as a buddy, and Tom has volunteered as a buddy. And I invited Tom because he was in my group, and I wanted support today. Because if I don't get the message across, you can help me elaborate on it. Anyway, so this year we took 48 kids, 36 adult volunteers, and 10 staff members up to Camp Cedar Ridge for a weekend of fun, connection, and grief work, right? The children that came to Camp Good Grief have experienced the death of someone important to them. The camp has been happening since 1999 with a few years off for COVID. So it's got quite a history, and it just keeps getting better and better, doesn't it, Tom? I mean, it just keeps, yeah, it's just amazing. So grieving children are our best teachers. Us as counselors, we don't know their experience. They're the experts of their experience. We only know what the clinical information about grief, right? But everybody is different. So we can't assume anything about their journey. Camp Good Grief is a safe, open, nurturing container for children and teens to explore their grief, share their story, and be the compassionate listening for others' stories and others' pain. The children have experienced a lot of traumatic deaths, such as homicide, suicide, and drug overdose. Many of these being witnessed by the children themselves. So it's been really, they're getting harder and harder to facilitate, I'll tell you. Their grandparents, who have been the stabilizing factor in their lives, have died. Their unborn brothers or sisters, their living siblings, their favorite aunt or uncle, and unfortunately, most have lost their parents. And yet, they keep showing up for life. You saw them, how much fun they were having, right? Some more engaged than others, but their resilience is remarkable. We laugh at camp, we have water fights, as you see, we try and dance. And we have s'mores. And they're all in, despite their pain. And so it's just amazing to watch. At the end of camp, in the closing ceremony, which you saw with the candles, No, that's the memorial. Never mind. After the memorial, we do a closing ceremony, right? And it's fun, and I'm loud, and we have a good time. That's the whole microphone thing. But I ask the kids what they've learned from camp. And it's a tricky thing because we never know what they're going to say, right? But we love to hear things like, oh, I learned that crying is okay, and that my feelings are normal, or that deep breathing helps. All these things we've taught them. We're so excited. It's important to honor my person. I'm not the only one. And the best one we love to hear is, I know that I'm going to be okay now. Research tells us that children and teens who have experienced a death and have not gotten support have a higher risk of disconnection, school dropout, drug and alcohol abuse, risky behaviors, incarcerations, and suicide. Research also tells us that children and teens who get support after the death have a higher rate of emotional intelligence, compassion for others, awareness and understanding of their own personal experience, and a willingness and a desire to support others. It's a beautiful thing because it's a beautiful cycle, because our campers come back as teen volunteers, and then they come back as adult volunteers. And we even had one that started as a camper and came back as one of our counselors. So it's a beautiful cycle. And that is why there is a Camp Good Grief. So what does this have to do with us at Unity Grand Valley and the role that we play in the world as light workers? I don't know if you'll be able to relate, but I knew there had to be some very important lessons that came from gathering with kids, hearing their stories, experiencing their processing while doing their grief work, and witnessing their amazing transformation in just one weekend. From Friday afternoon to Sunday is magic. It is magic. They leave completely different children. And what I gained was just an awareness and appreciation for the qualities or the traits that I mentioned earlier. So the first lesson I have witnessed is the willingness or courage. These kids come to the First Christian Church on Friday afternoon, where we register them, load up their luggage, rip them away from their loved ones, right? And put them in a large room with people they do not know and expect them to be okay, right? So this is often the first time they've ever left their parents away from home or their adults. And most of them, it's the first time away from their familiar surroundings and environment since the death of their person. So death has turned their world upside down. And yet they're willing to step out of their comfort and confront their fears on so many levels to be a part of something that they know very little about. Maybe a parent told them that they're going, some are not forced to go, but strongly encouraged, right? Some of them, the school counselors have, encouraged the parents to send them. We try and talk them into coming, we tell them how much fun we're gonna have, talking about their dead person, right? That doesn't sound like fun, right? Somehow we make it fun, don't we? It's amazing. But the willingness and the courage to show up, to be engaged, to face the unknown is just awe-inspiring. So when was the last time you were willing to step out of your comfort zone to experience something new and something scary, in the vast chance you might grow? Willingness is a crucial aspect of the spiritual path for several reasons. First of all, openness to change. Spiritual growth often requires a shift in perspective, letting go of old habits, old beliefs, and embracing new ways of being. It helps with the acceptance of guidance. Willingness enables us to accept and integrate guidance, even when it challenges our current beliefs or comfort. And our commitment to growth. Willingness enables us to accept and integrate the guidance, even when it challenges our current belief. Did I already say that? I already said that one, sorry. Commitment to growth. Willingness is about actively choosing to pursue spiritual development, even when it requires effort or discipline. And embracing uncertainty, just like these kids do. Willingness allows us to embrace uncertainty and entrust in the process, rather than needing concrete assurances or guarantees. Willingness acts as a gateway to deeper spiritual exploration and growth. Just like it provided the gateway for those kids to walk into camp, it opens the door to new possibilities and allows us to navigate the complexities of the spiritual path with an open heart and mind. The second quality that the campers taught me is vulnerability. So not only are they away from everything familiar and comfortable to them, but now they are being asked to share themselves, share their history, share their stories, and open up the wound. Many of the kids do not get the opportunity to share their story at home, or the circumstances around the death, or their personal grief journey. Sometimes their families don't talk about it, or they're not allowed to talk about it. We know the number one healing factor in grief is telling your story. Grief must be shared, heard, and validated in order to process it so we can move through the natural progression of grief. When we do not have an outlet for our grief to be witnessed, it can create a complicated, prolonged grief experience. And in some cases, we have youth that have even been punished for talking about their grief or their loved one. That was a hard one. So for our kids to participate in storytelling, they must be very vulnerable. We have several activities at camp in our groups that provide an opportunity for the kids to share. You saw the memory boxes that we create. They create their memory boxes in honor of their loved one. We have their picture, their person's picture there. So that's how they tell their story. They tell their story through that box. We have other ways as well. But we always meet them where they're at. Because we had one little girl this weekend, and we'll talk a little bit more about her, but she didn't have a story. She didn't think she had a story because she didn't know her dad. Her dad died by suicide. She didn't know that until the funeral, and so she didn't have a story. So the implement that we use, the activity we use this year to tell part of the story, she just kind of refused to do it. I don't have a story, And then, and so I encouraged her, and I addressed the whole group. I said, you know what? She thinks she doesn't have a story. This may not be about her dad. It's her story. It's her story about her dad and about her grief and about not having her dad and all that. And then she goes on to start telling her story and goes on and on and on. I'm like, wow, did I open a can of worms on that one? But anyway, it was great. She really needed it, obviously. So vulnerability on the spiritual path can be deeply transformative and beneficial. It helps with authentic connection. Authenticity fosters deeper relationships and a sense of belonging. Emotional healing. Vulnerability involves acknowledging and expressing our true feelings, fears, and insecurities. This process of honest self-expression can lead to emotional healing and the release of repressed or unresolved issues, like doing shadow work. Increased empathy. When we are open about our own struggles and experiences, we're more likely to empathize with others, which we see all the time at camp. And then just trusting in the divine. Vulnerability often requires a deep trust in the divine or the greater process of life. By surrendering control and being open to uncertainty, we cultivate a deeper trust in the universe and in the guidance of divine ideas. It also gives us deeper insight. When we're open and vulnerable, we're more likely to gain profound insights into ourselves, which can illuminate our way and help us make more aligned decisions. So vulnerability on the spiritual path is a profound expression of courage and authenticity, just like it is with these kids. It facilitates healing, growth, a deeper connection, and allows us to live more fully in alignment with our spiritual beliefs. And it's through vulnerability that these kids grow exponentially through the weekend. One of my favorite things to witness, is these kiddos is curiosity, wonderment, discovery, and adventure. I know that's a lot of words, but when you think about it, curiosity and wonderment fuel discovery and adventure, right? I mean, think about it. There's no better trait in a kid than that curiosity. And when you build that spaceship in the backyard and it's going to go to the moon, there's no doubt, right? You have no doubt in your mind, right? Or when you build that fort, it's it's the bomb. Anyway, so these kids are so curious about each other's experience and how it relates to theirs, their curiosity about learning about the process of grief and how it applies to them and their experience. They're open and curious about all the activities that we do, and the older kids that I work with are curious about their feelings and how they affect them, how they affect them in their lives. And it's also very crucial in the spiritual growth because it drives the quest for understanding and meaning, which are central to the spiritual journey. It opens new perspectives. It encourages us to explore different philosophies, practices, and experiences, which can lead to a broader understanding of our own beliefs and the beliefs of others. It encourages deep inquiry. Curiosity propels us to ask profound questions about purpose, about consciousness and connection, leading to deeper insights. It promotes personal growth. A curious mindset encourages us to explore and challenge our own assumptions and limitations, which can lead to significant inner development. It cultivates a sense of wonder. Curiosity nurtures a sense of wonder and awe by encouraging us to appreciate the mysteries of life and the universe. It encourages experimentation. It allows us to get out of our box, out of what we think we know, and try new things. I think the one that surprises and delights us, facilitators and the buddies, because the volunteers are actually they're called buddies, because they are with the kids 24 hours. We sleep together, eat together, and do group together. So the campers never leave the buddy site. So Karen and Tom both have been volunteer buddies, so we call them buddies. But I think the one that really thrills us the most and kind of amazes us is presence and compassion that these kids show. It takes some time for their pain to soften, so that to the point of being able to relate to another's experience. But when in the circle, we always teach the kids to listen with their eyes, with their ears, with their bodies, and with their hearts. And when they know that others are going to listen to them in the same manner, it provides a safe container for them to be able to share on a much deeper level. We have an activity at camp in one of our curriculum that entails the youth brainstorming about the feelings that they've experienced or are experiencing. And then we have them write them on the rocks. So you saw the rocks with the words on them. So we may have a large rock of guilt or anger, or we may have a medium-size disappointment or fear rock. They're all different sizes depending on how much guilt they have or how much sadness they have. So we have a big pile of rocks with all these words. And then what we have them do is we ask them one at a time to pick up the rocks, the emotions that they are feeling, and put them in a backpack. So they pick up these rocks. And what's beautiful is when they can pick up the rock and say, this is how much fear I have because I'm afraid someone else is going to die, or whatever. This is how much overwhelm I have because I don't know where I'm going to live. All these things, right? So they're putting in these rocks in this backpack. And then they're asked to stand up and walk around with these rocks or emotions in the backpack. We talk about trying to sleep with the backpack. We try to play sports with the backpack, playing with your friends, sitting at the movies in it, right? This way they can experience the impact of their emotions on a deep, visceral level. This helps them understand why grief is so heavy and why they sometimes feel defeated by it. The most beautiful thing that can happen, and you saw this in one of the pictures, is in this exercise, is when a child is struggling to stand up or walk, another camper comes up behind them, picks up the backpack, and walks with them. That's a beautiful thing to see. This shows them that grief is easier when we allow others to help us. And by helping others, it lifts our own grief for a time. Presence allows space for connection and empathy. In my group this year, we had 5 girls and 2 boys. And one of the girls we knew ahead of time was very emotionally dysregulated and had already been kicked out of a couple church camps. So she was very loud. She talked in this weird character voice and was very physical, with big physical movements. She was very disruptive in the group. And quickly, influenced two of the other girls to like get right along in line with her behavior. So then we had 3 of them. So thank God for Tom. Yeah. So we allowed her to express herself the way she needed to, knowing that it was all fueled by pain of her grief and circumstances in her life. They were pretty bad. So she slowly calmed down throughout the weekend, and then anytime she began to exhibit that disruptive behavior, I knew something was going on in her little head and in her little heart. So her and I stepped aside and we worked one-on-one just to validate and really hear what she was going through and just process that with her. She eventually was able to be present in the group setting, and present to others' stories. It was then that her empathy expressed itself and her compassion by the loving gesture she gave to the other kids in the group. She was always the first one to give a hug and the first one to give a Kleenex. And at the end of the camp, when we had the memorial towards the end with the candles and the things, at the end, all the kids, everybody gets to go up and just walk through and look at all the boxes with the pictures and all the decorations and stuff. Well, these 7 kids, all 7 of them, locked together. I wish I would have had a picture. Locked together into this group hug that seemed like an eternity. They would not let go of each other. I mean, it was huge. It was all 7 kids, and they were just all wound up in this ball of love, just holding each other and crying. It was the most beautiful thing. Presence, or the practice of being fully engaged and attentive in the moment, is essential in our spiritual growth for several reasons. It deepens awareness. Presence allows us to fully experience and observe our thoughts, emotions, and surroundings without distraction. This heightened awareness is crucial for understanding our inner self and recognizing patterns or behaviors that may need attention or transformation. It facilitates mindfulness, and we know what mindfulness does. Paying attention in the present moment without judgment. Mindfulness helps to cultivate a non-reactive awareness that can lead to greater clarity and insight in our spiritual path. It fosters compassion, as we saw obviously at camp. When we're present with others, we're more likely to listen attentively and respond with empathy. Presence anchors us in the here and now, allowing us to fully engage and experience the spiritual journey. So finally, the most profound trait that the youth display is acceptance and surrender. Acceptance or reconciliation is the goal of grief work. We know that our loved ones cannot return to this time and space, and we know that we cannot live with intense suffering for long. In their journey, they come to an understanding that the pain of loss will lessen, and the grief may not shrink, but that they're going to grow around it. They exhibit the willingness again to surrender the thought or desire for life to return to normal, and that they will now create a new normal. The most impactful exercise that we do at camp is what we call the flower pot activity. The campers are given a small little terracotta pot, and they're asked to decorate it in relation to their life before the death. So we see flowers, and we see, things that they used to do, hobbies, memories that they hold dear to their hearts. And as facilitators, the counselors, we tell them that the pots are going to change throughout the weekend, similar to the way their lives have changed. When finished, they're asked to share the meaning of the symbols. So they all share, this was my uncle's favorite thing, this is what he used to call me, this is what we used to do together, this is my mom's favorite flower, this is how much my grandma loved me, all the things. It's wonderful. After each person shares, I explain that the pots will change to represent the death. So I ask one of the campers to volunteer their pot. I wrap it in a towel and I break it with a rock or a hammer. So you can imagine the reactions. The kids express emotions like anger, shock, denial, and a lot of confusion. I definitely become the brunt of their lashing out. for the rest of the weekend. It doesn't just stop there. I have to tell you a funny story. We had a little boy that's on the autism spectrum in our group, and he would communicate through cartoons. So he would draw cartoons instead of we journaled a lot. So instead of writing, he would do the there's a name for him, like the kind of like Anyway, so he would do it in cartoons, and so all of his cartoons were about me breaking that stupid pot. And then he put in there, why, Judian, why, right? So that was the meme for the rest of the weekend. Why, Judian, why? Every time I would say something. And then at the end of camp, we all sign each other's T-shirts, and give them funny messages or whatever. And sure enough, 4 times, I had 4 of them. Why, Judian, why, on the back of my shirt. Yeah, they are not happy campers with me, that's for sure. Anyway, but I'm the one that breaks it, not the buddies, for that reason. So, and then when it begins to dawn on the other kids in the group that theirs is going to get broken, oh man, because first of all, they're like, why did you do that to their pot, Like that was going to be the only one. But then they realize that they may be next. Anyway, so they try and hide them. We had blankets. They were hiding them under their blankets. It was funny. They ask if they can break them. Then they try to bargain with me and plead with me and rationalize why theirs should not be broken, right? So they ask me all kinds of questions. Can I break it? Anyway, so all these reactions become great teaching tools for us. Can you hide from the death of your loved one? Were you in control when your person died? Could you control how they died? So they begin to recognize their place in the death and the fact that they had no control over it. So as we continue to talk about the symbolic meaning of creating and breaking the pot, what happens next is very revealing. As we sit in the circle talking and breaking pots, I look over and I notice that they're trying to put their pot back together already, like they're fitting the pieces in, right? And as soon as it fits in like a puzzle, they're just like, oh, whew, it's going to be, it's fixed, right? But as soon as they try to do that, of course, they let go and the pot falls apart again. So I point out that grief cannot be fixed. Sorry, guys. And that healing takes time. We can't hurry the process. It's addressing the grief in the grief work. That is the glue that will hold it together. So we make them wait. We make them wait until the next afternoon to glue their pots back together, just to represent that we can't grief is not a quick fix, right? Then, when we finally allow them to glue the pots back together, it takes many hands, which teaches them that grief needs to be shared, and it's very difficult to do alone. And sometimes it takes more than them and their buddy. It takes several people to hold glue and hold all the pieces together. It's amazing, which is something we need to remember in our spiritual work, because think of Einstein's famous quote, "No problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it." We all need objective perspective from time to time. So once the kids surrender to the process and accept help, they are successful in reconstructing their pots, symbolizing their lives. The acceptance they experience is knowing that their lives or pot will never be the same, but that it'll still be usable and beautiful. It brings them to that reconciliation that I talked about, that yes, their loved one died, and it's hard, and they're sad, and they can live a beautiful, productive life. It goes together. They can now surrender to the reality that they can live in that dichotomy of life. Why surrender is important in our spiritual path is because it helps us align with our higher will. It involves letting go of the personal control and aligning with the higher power of divine will. This opens us up to guidance, trust, and alignment with the greater purpose. It reduces ego and self-will. Surrendering helps diminish the dominance of ego and self-will, and by letting go of the need to control every outcome or to assert personal desires, we cultivate humility and openness. Where acceptance plays a role on our spiritual journey is that it enhances self-awareness. Accepting ourselves fully, including our strengths and flaws, promotes self-awareness and self-compassion. It strengthens resilience. Acceptance helps us deal with difficult situations more effectively. By accepting challenges as part of the journey, we build resilience and learn to respond to adversity with grace and wisdom. Acceptance is not about passive resignation, but about acknowledging the present moment so we can move forward with greater clarity. It allows us to see the opportunities for growth and transformation that might be obscured by resistance or denial. So surrender and acceptance are integral to spiritual development because they help us align with deeper truths and navigate life's challenges with greater ease. Surrender involves letting go of control and trusting divine order, which fosters trust, openness, and inner peace. Acceptance involves embracing reality and ourselves fully, leading to inner harmony, resilience, and compassion. Together, these practices help us cultivate a more profound and authentic spiritual life. So I hope this comparison of this remarkable capacity that the children at Camp Good Grief show in order to open to the process can help you see what is needed and available to assist you on your spiritual journey. As we learn to become more like children, resourcing our willingness, vulnerability, curiosity, presence, acceptance, and surrender, the kingdom of heaven, or our divine knowing, opens to us, creating a joyous, peaceful, purpose-filled life. Thank you.